Hey y'all, welcome to the Anchored Identity Podcast. Yes, we have changed the name. If you didn't know, now you know. It's no longer the New Season Podcast. We are the Anchored Identity Podcast, but your belief is your anchor. So, switching things around, I'm super excited to have this season, and we're going to be really focusing on mental health, mental illnesses. Not necessarily, I might not necessarily go in details about each mental illness or whatever, but I definitely want to focus on healing. I want to focus on how identity definitely affects our health, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. It affects everything. And I am no expert, but yeah, I know I like to use a lot of my own personal stories on. I'll tell y'all everything, pretty much the good, the bad, the ugly, and the oogly. So, and the reason why I do that if you're new to the channel is because I feel like if I'm going through it, somebody else is going through it too. And always let me know what you're thinking. If you got something to say, a comment, or a lesson learned, drop it in the comments. I really love to hear from you guys. Y'all talk to me one-on-one. But do me a favor, put it in the comments so more people can see it, and then we can get a bigger audience. We can reach more people and so forth and so on. As y'all know, I like to ramble, but let me get to the point of this episode. So this episode, I have my good friend, Cat Francis, coming on. And I know y'all know that I was in the Navy for like 12 years. And even though we prepared for a war and there were some sketchy situations, I have yet, no. I have not gone to war. Never happened. Thank God. But if you have this, you will definitely relate to this episode. But what I noticed is war happens in different ways of our life, especially in the spirit realm. Spirit realm. In the spirit realm, we are fighting a war, spiritual warfare. And so that's why she's here. We're going to talk about it more with her. I'm going to ask questions. This can definitely turn into a two-parter. I always bring her back if y'all want to learn more about it. But no further ado, I'm going to bring her in. So let's get started. Hey, Kat, how are you?
How are you?
I'm
You.
I'm good. I'm good. So the audience knows that you are the expert at this. Okay. I'm learning a lot from you. So I thank you. I thank you. I thank you. And we're talking about spiritual warfare. And you wrote about this in your book. What you love is killing you. First of all, the title is already catchy. Okay. You guys will learn more about who she is and what she does and all her accolades and whatever else as we continue to talk. But the title itself, What You Love is Killing You. Can you explain about why you came up with this title? What does that even mean?
So I do a lot of counseling work, inner healing work, as I like to call it. I believe in therapy. And so one of the things that I realize though, sometimes when you talk to a therapist, you're talking about these things. Sometimes you're having to figure out why your mama did this and you don't know, she don't know why she did that. And so as those different conversations happen, there's always a deeper root issue. And in so many conversations I have with people as it relates to inner healing specifically, because I'm not a therapist, although I did a degree in psychology and several other things and ministerial, I am a minister. I'm like, so this is the person you want to be with, or this thing, whatever it is, and I've said it like, so what you love is killing you, right? Like literally you have physical ailments because of this relationship. I don't know, but I just can't let them go. Your blood pressure is going up while you're talking about the person, that kind of stuff. People with real like serious ailments, even as it relates to food, right? Like you're eating things, but literally it's like, and so that's how it came up. And then I just kept saying it. I just kept finding myself listening to people's stories and like, this is killing you. I know, and that's it. And so even with the title, when I share with people, everybody always knows that they have something that they love that's killing them, which is so amazing to me. And that's where we are.
You said food, and I was thinking, mm, Those Takis are killing me.
That part. We all have that. We all have that. It's that. Look, yeah, I'm not gonna tell you what that was. I had something and I'm like, man, why is my tongue burning? I don't know why. I'm like, the margaritas with the tahine rim. It's like, oh, I think I might
Yeah,
I got burn my tongue on one of the tahine rims. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, what happened?
it's killing me. Takis for sure.
Okay.
Okay, so you said something in there about like how there's things in our lives that are killing us, but one, we don't want to get rid of it.
Mhm.
But then two, you said something about how we don't know, like how
Absolutely.
we don't know what it is. Can you
Right.
explain that?
So I don't think that it's that we don't know what it is. We don't realize that the real detrimental effects,
Mm.
right? I talk to people like, all into health conscious, but they have awful relationships with their family, with their relationships, with their significant other. And I remember telling someone like, you can eat super healthy, go to the gym, but if you don't have healthy relationships, you're still stressed out. Your blood pressure is still going out because this person is not good for you or whatever that situation is, and or you're holding on to bitterness, right? Even though you're working out and healthy, and that's going to mess you up because your body's going to produce toxins that actually, creates autoimmune challenges. But you're working out, you're eating right. So it's kind of one of those interesting things that's just kind of been scientifically proven. So when you talk about from a spiritual standpoint, we talk about forgiveness, not holding on to bitterness, all these different things that happen in our relationships and in our life, but we don't realize the real negative impact of those things.
Now, I remember we've been going through a lot, talking, and you teach me some things, and agreements has been one of those things.
Agree.
Can you what are agreements? What is that?
Agreements come in many different forms. So agreements from a child is maybe a person says you can do anything and you agree with that, and that's great. But then you try to climb up a fence or climb up a tree, like get down from there, you're gonna hurt yourself. So there's a conflicting message, right? Like I could do anything. And then when you do something that they don't agree with, like, oh, no, don't do that. Or you have a business idea and it's like they say, oh, well, girl, I know somebody who did that, let me tell you what happened to them. And so you agree with it one way or another. Sometimes we make agreements within ourselves, which, I talk about vows that we make as kids. And when you trace it back with people, people can think about a time where they made a vow as a kid, I'm never going to do that. They mad at their mama or something happened or they saw a relationship that wasn't good and they made a vow about that. So that's an agreement that we make within ourselves. The challenge is that many people 20, 30, 40, even 50 years later are living out those agreements and it impacts their relationships.
Yeah. Okay, so shucks, I should have had my book in here. I wrote down like multiple agreements that after we kept talking, that just kept popping up. Like you made this agreement, you made this agreement. One of the agreements I made as a kid was I'm never getting married.
Mhm. There you go.
So, and the reason why I made the agreement is because during that time I was surrounded by like toxic relationships, or of course everyone knows about my daddy issues and so forth and so on. Well, the things I've gotten over, I don't have daddy issues. I'm gonna take that away from my identity.
I don't
But
agree with your daddy got issues, but they're not yours.
yes, yes. Okay, so that was one of the agreements. And now it's like, oh, I have a desire to be married, but I'm like, wait a minute. I said I will never get married. So is that's what you're talking about, right? Like,
Absolutely. And it's an agreement. And the thing is that we don't realize it's playing out in our life. And when you make those agreements, so let's talk about a little bit of physiology really briefly. Your mind only knows what you tell it. So if you start doing fake laugh, your body thinks, oh, we're laughing, ha ha ha. If you tell her we're not looking for that, or if you say we ain't got no money, whatever it is, in your mind, oh, we ain't got no money, we can't do that. And all you have is you start hearing a bunch of no's, no's, no's. When you're like, I'm never gonna get married, then you either start dating people that are not really marriage material, the kind of people you wouldn't get married, because they come into alignment with your agreement. Or you find somebody that is marriage material, but then you sabotage the relationship. And they leave you and turn around and marry somebody else. And you like, I done gave you the best years of my life. Well, you had agreed you want to get married. And everything in your interaction with that person agree with, I'm never going to marry this person. So I'm not going to do the types of things or even make the level of engagement. And I say compromise, not in a compromising your values, but like, how do we come together? Because you said, I'm never going to get married. So you're not looking at that relationship as something that's going to be long term, even though you're telling yourself you may want that.
Okay, so now we don't want to stay there. So how do we
Okay.
get out? Yeah, how do we get out of the agreement?
Well, so I go through these agreement prayers, first of all, part of it acknowledging like where it came from, getting to the root issue. So again, as you shared, and I think we talked about the time, looking at the relationships that the people were having in your life. And I think there was a very specific relationship where the man wasn't doing right by the relative, and you're like, I don't want that for my life. And that is it. And let me say, it is okay to have boundaries. It's
Mhm.
okay to say, I want my life to look like A, B, and C. The thing is that a lot of those agreements and vows are made from a place of brokenness and disappointment. And that's where they're not rooted in trusting God, or not rooted in having faith. They're not rooted in, you know what, I'm going to make better choices. They're not rooting in something that you can do to not be that person. Because I
Mhm.
talk to people all the time in counseling and things like that, and women and men, and they attract people, and I'm like, I've just never attracted somebody that wanted to like hurt me physically. They might have been mad, they might have even walked away, but they weren't like trying to come at me, right? So
Mhm.
what is it about that person that's attracting that kind of individual? Because while we can, blame people for their behavior and all that, we tolerate certain things. And there's a lot of
Mhm.
I don't tolerate in my relationship or even in my friendships, that other people do. So what agreement did you make that you don't have even the idea to have self-preservation? Right? Because if somebody tried to put a strangle you or suffocate you, you're gonna fight. You're not gonna just be like, oh, this killed me. No, right? It takes a lot because your body is physically like flight or fight. I mean, that's a physiological response to danger. But yet we put our guards down and allow dangerous people, and people are dangerous because they may not be considering our well-being. They make decisions that might unintentionally hurt us, but they're not considering the consequences to us, and we accept that.
So even excuse me. So even saying things like, because I'm going back into identity, putting some identity in this. So even saying things and believing I'm not worthy.
Absolutely.
So now you are believing that you are an unworthy person. So now when opportunities come and you're not selected, that's from you already stating and believing that you're not worthy.
But so let's go back. Most people who think they're not worthy don't actually think they're not worthy. They've been told they're not worthy. Most children are born with the idea that they can walk. I mean, they see people walk. Think about a baby. They're an infant. They're like, they need you to do everything. Then they start to gain some independence. They start crawling. They start trying to get out of your hands, right? And they hit a bunch of no's. You finna tear that. I got a glass table. You finna knock something down. My little trinkets now because you pulling up. And like, no, 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 right? And so while they're trying to find their independence, then they're being told no. So worthiness is relative depending on who you're engaging with.
Mm.
So when we are telling ourselves we're not worthy, it's because we've heard it someplace before. And usually it's someplace in childhood or in our education, or whether we hear it a lot in church. I'm just a sinner saved by grace. No, you're not. There's no place in the Bible that says you're a sinner saved by grace. The Bible
Mm.
says you're a new creation. The old has passed away. So if you're still walking in unworthiness and you are a child of God, you're believing a lie. You've made agreement with that because you haven't walked into the new creation self.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier there's prayers that you say, and there's not necessarily a right or wrong prayer, but and can you describe the prayer? I don't want to put words.
Yeah, so the prayer is like, Lord, I forgive me, for making agreements with the devil, with my mama, with, my daddy, with that ex-boyfriend over there. I choose to agree with you because see, I'm made in your image. If we find that in Genesis, that
Mhm.
let us make male and female, let us make man and woman in our image. He says I'm the apple of his eye. So if God says I'm the apple of his eye and your mama said you ain't no good, well, who you gonna believe?
Mm.
And when you're a kid, you believe your mama. So you're like, I'm not worthy. I can't do this right. You know what I mean? That's it.
Mhm.
But when you come into the knowledge of, okay, then I'm like, okay, I am worthy, or maybe I don't think I'm worthy, but I can do this well. And this is where a lot of the attachment things come in at. This is why we love things that are killing us. Because if we have a relationship or in our upbringing, we haven't been validated, right? And validation is interesting because we have the 5 love languages, right? And so if your love language is quality time and you're busy working 2 or 3 jobs to make sure that your kids have food on the table, you may not have the quality time to give to your child. Now your child don't feel loved because you don't have the quality time. Now you might tell them, hey girl, you got this, you could do this. You might have words of affirmation, but if that's not my love language, well, you I can't do it because you haven't been here to show me. Well, you probably could, but my love language is quality time. I don't just want you to tell me to cook that chicken. I want you to come in the kitchen with me, cook it with me, right? Because I value quality time, my love language. And so those agreements come and go. And now let's say you find some nice young man, because your mama working 3 jobs just to make ends meet, which happens a lot. And now that quality time that you got, because he ain't got nothing going on, guess who he's giving it to? You. So now you've idolized that because that's your love language, like that's your sweet spot. It don't even have to be that you're doing anything wrong. It's just somebody that sits with you. But once you begin to develop that level of trust and intimacy with that person, again, it doesn't always have to be sexual intimacy. They validate you. They value the things about you that you value about yourself that your parents or people in your life may be too busy to see.
But now you're thinking that that person loves you more than your parent.
All of that. Or even if they don't, you love them more than your parents because they're speaking your love language. And you're like,
Yeah.
understand me, they don't get me, they're always on my back, you know. So agreements come in different forms and facets
Wow.
from different places.
So now in that example, you just made an agreement that you don't love your parents because of what you believe or what your idea is, or they don't love you enough based on just that situation.
Absolutely, and that's where that's where it be well, and the agreement, and so let's just say this: the agreements vary. There are kids who get it that their parents work. I mean, I find it interesting. I deal with people that have addictions as well, and they tend to have like a lot of them like really good kids, and they're like my kids because the kids that seem like they don't want nothing to do with that, right? So it's really interesting. You got a lot of good church form, and they just trying to reel their kids in. They all in rebellion, you know. So it's a different thing. We agree for different reasons. You can have 2 kids in the same family that experience their parents very differently. You know, they have different experiences. Like I went to college. I had 2 of my kids when I was in college. My last child I was out of college. So she experienced the more successful me, not the struggling college student me,
Ooh.
right? So her
Wow.
expectations about life, about a lot of things are very different. Because she saw me on the other side of getting that piece of paper, right? So
Yeah.
she benefited from that.
Mm. Okay. Okay. So now, so that's agreements. Now you mentioned vows earlier.
Mhm.
Are vows and agreement the same thing?
Vows and agreements can be, they can, they relate. The difference between a vow is like when you said, I'm never getting married. That's different than saying, I don't feel worthy. I don't feel
Okay.
worthy is an agreement that you made because somebody else maybe have made you felt that way, or maybe you weren't good at something and they highlighted the thing you weren't good at. You know what I mean? And you begin to agree with that. But a vow was staunch, I'm never getting married because of this reason. And it's made out of pain, out of like, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that. And that's where that vow made. Very different than an agreement because agreements change.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So if you meet a man, he's like, bro, you so beautiful, you so fine, you so this, you might like, I am fine. You know, it don't matter that the dude before said I wasn't, and he left me for somebody prettier. Now you might feel some kind of way about that, but you meet the guy that's like, oh, you look good. Oh, I love the way you do that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you will begin to agree with that,
Mhm.
right? And the agreements get their real power based on the value that you give to the other person.
Yeah.
Right? So if somebody who I don't like you ain't nothing, like, bro, you don't know, I'm gonna show you, right? The best revenge is my success, and I'm gonna show you. Those are even vows and agreements too, right? Because
Yeah.
that person didn't really have any power. You didn't, they weren't somebody you looked up to. They weren't a teacher or somebody like you. They're just like, you know, you're just a side, whatever. So, but that's it. But if somebody that you value says that, even whether they believe in you or they don't believe in you, that gives that agreement more power.
And
And
that, I think that goes into how I always said how at once upon a time I was anchoring my identity in like my mom, my brother, my significant other, and different people who meant so much to me. And without me really realizing it, they were idols because I kept looking up to them versus, like you said earlier, okay, who does God say? Or yeah, who does God say I am? Or what does he say about me? Because that debunks what everyone else is saying.
It does, and it's a process because we gather, and again, in healthy attachments with our parents, we believe that when our parents says things about us, when they even make corrections, I mean, it's normal for a parent to make corrections about us, that's it. As we get older, we begin to realize, well, our parents aren't perfect and they got their own kind of issues. But when you're a kid, you don't realize that. You're not, I mean, unless they're egregious, you're not really
Yeah.
thinking the parents' issues are. As you get older, you be like, Mom, you haven't had a healthy relationship in like 20 years. So I mean, I don't know if I want to talk to you about mine, right? I mean, I can learn from all the stuff you did wrong. And I tell people, like, a lot of stuff I've learned, I learned because I didn't do it right. It's not because I did it right. I learned because I did it wrong. Like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So,
Yeah.
that part.
Okay. So that's vows. Now we talked about soul ties before.
Soul ties. Ugh, soul ties are deep. Soul ties are those deep connections we have with people that are based not only, people think it's always about sex, but it's not. It's also based on agreements. It's based on like I talk about having soul tie with my daughter. I have 3 kids. But my one daughter, it's a soul tie. Like if she like, oh, you ain't a good mama for this, and it's like, okay, then I'm trying to do everything to prove I'm a good mom. Well, she grown. She got kids of her own, right? You know what I'm saying? So I had to break off the agreement about her opinions about me being a mom, right? And so one of the things that I had said, well, I'm having a good mom. Mom be the best grandma ever. So when she be like, oh, can you come pick my kids up? Okay, well, I live in San Diego and your kids go to school in LA. But because I made that a vow, right, my agreement, I'm gonna be the best grandma. So guess what I'm doing? I'm getting in my car and driving how many hours to go pick them kids up from school from San Diego to LA, right?
Wow.
Because I made the vow agreement. Well, she might not think the best mom, but I'm gonna be the best grandma. And that comes with a price, a huge price. The price of gas, wear and tear on my car. And I love my grandkids. But that's different than having a vow and agreement that I'm gonna try to prove that while I may not have been something, I'm gonna be better at this. And we see
Yeah.
highly professional and successful people that's great, but many people that are successful got that point to prove to someone that they were better than what that person thought they were.
Mm.
Like we
And
had a t-shirt that said the best revenge is massive success.
we think that we done said a good word, drop the mic and walk away, but that's actually killing us.
It is killing us because a lot of times in that when you in that ideology, you don't have healthy relationships
Yeah.
because your identity is
Yeah.
success. We have a lot of successful women, but they can't find a good man because the man's intimidated by her. Like, that maybe that's not the real reason why. Maybe that man don't want to be second place to your job.
Yeah.
Maybe because you made a vow that you're never gonna trust a man to take care of you, then you date men that actually can't take care of you. So then you gotta work 5 jobs to maintain that lifestyle because you're not dating a kind of man that's supposed to be the man that finds a good wife and it finds a good thing. The man that doesn't take care of his household is worse than the infidel. You decide that you're gonna replace the replacement theory that since you haven't seen a good model of that, you're just gonna do it yourself.
Mhm.
So now you haven't been able to have healthy, successful relationships. There's nothing wrong with success. There's nothing wrong with being at the top of your game. The question has to go back, where did the root of that come from? And what are you sacrificing for the sake of that?
And I also want to add too, because I know people probably like, oh, they're talking about being married, and that's all women talk about. But relationships is with friends, with family. with anyone you come in contact with, and especially yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
So,
it is all about ourselves. And the Bible talks about, the devil is the enemy of our soul. And so when we talk about our soul, which is our mind, will, and emotions, you can see we're making a vow about marriage, about money, about that. You know what I mean? You hear people talk about rich people all the time, but then everybody trying to hustle to become rich. You can't have both of them. If you think rich people are bad and you want to talk about rich people, well then how you gonna make money? Your subconscious like that's bad. No,
mm,
no, no. So you sabotage opportunities. You don't even see opportunity. Like everything's a scam. Okay, it's a scam, but this person's living pretty good off that scam. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay. So it's stuff like that, right? Any new idea, especially, that's a scam. So this, so it's all a scam. Everything's a scam. Anything that you could actually make money on, that's a scam. You know what I mean? That kind
mm,
of thing. So
yeah,
again, it's not that you are successful and that's a problem. It's not that you haven't been able, maybe a relationship wasn't good. That's okay. But is it that you have a consistent pattern of not being able to have healthy relationships with people? That's different.
yeah. And
So
that's when you start asking those questions, or when you realize it, you start asking those questions of when, where, how, what, and everything else, so you can find where did it all begin. Where did this come from?
And that's true, but most people, it takes a long time to start asking those questions to themselves, honestly. The
Mhm,
first question people ask is, what's wrong with me?
mhm.
Right? Because the assumption is that there is something wrong with you, and there's not. You just made these agreements and these vows. It's not necessarily that there's anything you do. If I see women, they go to the gym, and there's nothing wrong going to the gym. But your identity can't be in your body, because I know women that I got friends that, they hefty and they thick, and guess what? They've been married multiple times. Now, whether they can keep those relationships is different, but they can get married, and you have women that hit in the gym every day, they pop, 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 and they can't find one husband. I believe the statistic is about 42% of African American women have never been married. Not that they're not married, but they have never even been married. So I think the stigma around, if I look this way, if I do these things, if what have you, it's not based on that. Because that meant that every thick woman that don't go to the gym, then she would never be married, and that's just not true.
Wow.
So when we think about agreements and where they came from, first of all, I think looking at ourselves is a good thing, but I think we should not be asking the question of what's wrong with us. It's like, okay, what am I missing?
Yeah.
You know, I talk about this when I used to do corporate training, and I taught college for a long time, and in corporate training, the managers are always talking about, oh, people just don't want to work. They want to like, and I tell them like, you know what? Let me just say this. I used to work for the prison, for the parole department. I've seen a lot of gang members, and I've always wondered, like, okay, how does this gang member get this woman who go to church 4, 5 times a week? She working hard to like just abandon every belief that person has tried to instill in them to go to a gang. Like, what are they doing? And how is it that a gang member can get that person to do all kind of stuff, and you cannot get a paid employee to just do their
Oh,
job, being paid for?
oh,
So is it the employee's fault, or is it your leadership? Because the gang leader has now totally taken all the values that this parents or whatever have put into this person, and they have totally like, screw that, let's do this.
mm,
But in a job, you have managers that cannot get their people to even help, just even to show up on time. Call me if you ain't going, kind of thing, right?
yeah,
So again, when we these questions like, yes, what am I doing? What do I need to be doing versus what I'm doing wrong? Because when you start asking, what am I doing wrong? And I'm not saying that we don't do things wrong. We start looking inwardly towards our own fault instead of saying, what should I be doing? What is old girl doing that's on her third husband that I'm not doing to get my first or second, right? What is she doing?
no, just my first. I'm
So
not trying to do 2 and 3.
yeah, and that's something good. That's good. But it's just the thought, right? Because I have women that have been able to find one, and I got several friends that married 4, 5 times. So this like, okay, so what I want to learn from that one is how to get them. Then I got to learn from somebody else, how do I keep them, right? Because I can't learn how to keep it from her because she haven't done that part yet,
Yeah.
right? But she get them down the aisle. She get a ring on her finger. She just have to figure out how to keep them.
Yeah.
So now I'm okay, I got them. Now I'm going to talk to somebody else about how to keep them. And then that's the part.
Okay. Okay, so if you had to put a definition on it, I just want to make sure that we say the definition. What is a soul tie?
A soul tie is a part of where you have given a part of your heart to that person, and that person, your heart is basically fragmented. It means you could be in a healthy relationship with a wonderful person, and that person call you, and next thing you're trying to do is like, I'm gonna go over to Starbucks. I just wanna, we haven't seen all of that. Soul ties. It's your child asking you to do. My daughter called me once and she's like, Mom, the lady's coming to clean my house. Can you come up here? You want me to drive from San Diego all the way up to LA County to go watch the baby clean your house? Yeah, I can't, and I still love you, but it's that love strain, right? I gotta prove that I love her because she has commented that, you weren't there for me. Like, okay, and I just have to come to that terms with it. So that's the soul type. A lot of it has to come with sexual intimacy, but it's not all that. We do it with pastors and preachers, right? Like that person's above that. They're a person who's called by God, and we elevate them. And we make our whole life decisions on that shepherd. And a shepherd is not somebody who tells you how to be a sheep, they guide you. But we can idolize those things. So it doesn't always have to be sexual intimacy. And I think that's where people always think about soul ties. No, because look, I grew up in church. I'm a church girl through and through. But I've seen it, I've seen it happen in many things where, we give up, we don't have healthy relations because we're tied to the church. The church is an organization, a relationship with God, and God says that a man will leave his father and mother and cling to his wife. So if you leave your father and mother and cling to your wife, your significant other, vice versa, and now you cling into the church more than you cling into your significant other, well, you kind of out of order, right? But then you got the verses that say, well, those who forsake father and mother, whatever. I don't think it says husband or wife, but maybe it does. And then that's it. So there has to be a balance. Without the proper teaching, we can get off kilter, right?
Yeah.
So these are the things. So these are all the different things that when we make agreements, we sometimes agree with what the word says or what a pastor says, but it's not actually what the word says. We like, God helps those who help themselves. That's not in the Bible. That's a cliche. God helps those who humble themselves. Right?
God helps who?
God helps those who humble themselves. If God will help somebody say, Lord, I can't do this. Now he'll come right down there and help you. Then I got this, whenever I ask for help. So it's those kind of things. So again, the play on words, soul ties, life and death and power of tongue, they're really huge. And then what you love is killing you. What we begin to see in relationships is we've attached ourselves to things or objects that were serving us well in the beginning. For the most part, it started off being good. It just ended up being something that's not good. Right? It was love and it was this, even the job you love, right? You had a job and all that, and it was great. You were so grateful. But a couple months into it, a couple years into it, this job is killing you, but you don't let go of it. And again, the lie could be there's no other job. There's all these other different things that come to play in that. And that's part of when what you love is killing you. It could be food. People are diabetic, all kind of different types of things. Sugar, I got my sugar thing. So again, I'm preaching to the choir. Everything I say, I'm preaching to the choir. It's all those different types of things. So it's not just one thing. And I think what I've learned is that we have to value the story that got people there. And then what you love is killing you. We talk about like, why are you holding on to toxic relationships? For men, use a whole different language for mental health. And I do a lot of work with men. And it's like you're burnt out, you're overworked. Right? The man is just wore out and like, oh, you strong, I got it. Right? And so there's these different things that we agree with that aren't serving us well. And the truth is that physiologically, your body begins to respond to the stresses that you have. And it may not be right away, but over periods of time.
Yeah.
So I have been in doctor's appointments with people, clients, men And they talking about that person and their blood pressure is going way up. You know what I mean?
I remember you said that earlier. You was like, you in the gym 2 hours a day, you eat nothing but veggies, and you got a body fat count of 1. Okay. However, everything spiritually, the agreements, the vows, the soul ties, the relationships, you still are in poor health because those things are affecting your body.
Yep. They're affecting your emotions. They affect your soul. They affect your goals and your dreams. And it affects how we see God loving us,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because you want to get married and you made a vow as a child that you never get married and you don't really think that there was any significance in that per se. That's how you felt at the time. And now you're there and then you like, man, like I'm dating these people, but they're, this is not working out. We get mad at God. Cause we like, God, how come I can't find it? And, we are spiritual people that live in a physical world. Like God made man, he put the spirit in us.
Yeah.
So we're in the spirit.
So, and speaking of that, okay, so now going back into because all this is spiritual warfare. This, when you were talking about the physical part, being healthy, the way we think health is physically, but the spiritual part is everything that we're talking about now. So, what are some? I think you've given a lot, but if you can give maybe like 3 steps as of now, like they're listening, they're like, all right, what do I need to do right now to start getting out of this funk that I'm in because of the agreements, the vows, and the attachments.
So the one thing that I do is I just sit with the notepad for one, and from there I really just ask God like what's going on. I like to believe that I am making an effort to be led by the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Um and one of the things that I talk about as it relates to that is the Logos word and the Rhema word. The Logos word is the written word of God. The Rhema word is what is God telling you to do at that moment with the written word of God. What he might be telling your girlfriend to do may not be what he's telling you to do, right? He might be telling you like this relationship is not for you. But he might be telling your girlfriend, you need to pray for this man. This is my son. And he might not be acting right now, but if you pray for him and you speak life over him, he can become what you need him to be or what you're asking me to become for him. So identifying where you are and what is God telling you about your situation, right? And then asking, what are the root causes of this? Because if God came that you might have abundant life and have it more abundantly, and you're not walking out abundant life, well, then what part of this are you missing? Right? I've had to ask the question. Our pastor recently did this sermon on winning in life. And I think, well, you know what? I'm good in these other areas, but I'm like, well, there's some other areas I ain't doing that great in right now. It's not that I've never done great in those things. It's like right now, I've spent so much time in some of these other areas of my life that other areas of my life have been neglected, in all honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to like ask myself that. So I shared this with a couple people and they're like, oh, well, sister, and like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I want to know what God is saying. Because it's not just get up and go or do something different or what have you. It's like, what do I need to be doing? How do I, reclaim these areas of my life that are no longer serving me well or what have you? And that's the question that I have to ask because I want to be led by the Spirit. I'm in my 50s. I've been led by me for a long time. And let me tell you, me has got me to some situations. So seeking God for what that is, asking for wisdom and discernment, because sometimes we don't have to get out of every relationship, every situation. We just have to show up differently. You definitely have to, get into the word to know what agreements are you making and what agreements are you making that are lies. Because if you've grown up with I'm a sinner saved by grace, you never have good self-esteem. You're always this and you're always that. Why? Because you're just a wretched sinner and that's it. And you walk like a wretched sinner. And the problem with wretched sinner ideology is that you keep falling in the same sin patterns because you think you're just a sinner and it's, oh, but the grace of God that I didn't do that. A new creation is like, you know what? I ain't even trying to be feeling all jacked up, trying to be with somebody, and they ain't even trying to be committed to me. All that, right? Like you look at it differently. So I'm a new creation. I don't have to fall into the same patterns. There's a scenario thing. I don't even know what to call it. Little story skit, and it's like my friend and I, we always talk about that. These are examples of our life, right? I was walking down the street, saw a hole, fell in it. Took me a couple of months, got out of the hole, kept on walking. Walking down the street again, saw the hole, fell in it. Took me about a year to get out that hole, but I got out and I walked down the street and I did that. Walking down the street again, saw the hole, walked around it, looked in it, fell in again. Now it took me 2 years to walk down the street and get out of that hole. Next scenario is I walk down the street, I decide to cross the street to go down another street, right? That part. And if we look at the patterns of our life, that's what it looks like. It looks like some craziness. You know what I'm saying? It looks like I've been on this hole before, right? Relationships, whatever, yo dieting, girl, I'm looking good. And man, the minute you get on the scale, you look right, you stop dieting. Like it's just gonna stay off. Girl, that part right there. So we all got stuff we love as killing us. We got patterns that are no longer serving us well, and everybody's pattern is different. So when you begin to look at the root causes, that's it. One of the other causes is bitter root judgment. And this one's so huge because we do it so subconsciously that we don't realize that we're doing that. So we'll judge people in our past. We'll judge a girl down the street. We judge everybody. Oh, girl, she this, that, they, that. And the Bible says, judge not lest you be judged. The same way you judge other people, judge unto you. And it also says, be careful when you be judging other people, lest you fall into the same pattern yourself. And how many times have we seen that? You've seen it from the pulpit. We see it with big celebrities. They big on whoop, whoop, whoop. And then come to find out when you lift up their skirt, they're doing the same thing that they done judge somebody else for doing. And I tell people, look, hypocrisy is not that we do wrong. We all fall short. Hypocrisy is a lack of grace you have for other people when you are just as susceptible to do the same thing. You want people to overlook your stuff, but you can't overlook their stuff, that person's stuff, especially our parents. We quick for that. What our mama didn't do, whatever, and then you look at your life and you're doing the same thing that your mama did. You attract the same type of man that your mama attracted. You mad about her for picking your daddy. Why you pick him? And you like, I don't know, but why you pick him? Same reason, So that's it. So when what you love is killing you, just ties a lot into those things like that. But it's also just a practical book. It talks about the physical responses, the fact that you're having anxiety around certain people, the fact that you don't feel, you could be feeling great about yourself, and then there's certain people that they come in your life and they say things, and for whatever reason we've given them like the power, like their words are more weightier to our identity than what the Bible says, or even what we believe about ourselves. Because you can be in a room with people and those people can be praising you, like, yes, thank you. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. And you could go home or go meet up with a friend who might be insecure or jealous or whatever their situation is, or familiar, because they knew you win. And they're like, girl, don't let that get to your head. Because I remember when they can't even celebrate you at that moment. I know you knew me when I had buck teeth, whatever. That's great. But right now, let me have a moment. Right? That was like 50 years ago.
Yeah.
I can't the moment, you can't. But the truth of the matter is, the hard part is that depending on the depth of that relationship with that person, it meant something. It meant that I'm still not good enough. I have all the accolades. I'll make 6, 7 figures. But because of that one person's opinion, I still got to do more. I got something to prove. And when you live your life trying to prove something, your decisions are always skewed. And that's the truth. So when you have bitter root judgments, we got to break off those bitter root judgments. You got to realize that your mama had a story, your daddy had a story, your friend had a story, that ex-boyfriend had a story, and all those stories are converging upon each other.
Yeah.
And just release them with their story and decide, like, you know what? I know you want to keep walking down that street with that hole in the ground. I get it, but I'm gonna go on the other side. Now, if you want to meet me on the other side, that's great. But like, I done been in that hole with you way too many times, honey. And matter of fact, I done been in that hole without you. So guess what? I'm gonna go. Matter of fact, I don't even go down that block no more. Right? And we get
But you won't even get to that point until you come to the agreement that you are a new creation. Until you start believing, it's like now you have to make a choice. The choice has to be made. Do you want to continue going down this road? Do you want to continue feeling like this? Or do you want to change and now live out the belief and accept the belief and live out accept the belief, but also accept the gifts that God has given you because He said it was all done. Like it's finished. Everything that you did in the past and the things you're doing now and the things you'll do in the future have all been nailed to the cross. So
absolutely.
if you don't believe that, then none of this stuff that we're talking about today will even matter.
Absolutely. Well, and that's true. Then there's so many aspects of that. I mean, this is gets so rich. I mean, it's a little bit outside of the scope of my book, but let me just talk about that. You know, look, we sin. Adam sinned, we sin. This is the problem. That most churches spend so much time talking about sin, but they never taught us how to walk out as a new creation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not always that we just believe, we don't believe, it's that we haven't been taught that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you're always told, like, I deal with a lot of people, they have fear. They fear about this. Oh, be careful, be careful. You're like, okay. I had this is a young lady, and she was like, I was telling her I was driving up to LA, whatever, see my daughter, like, okay. No, I just pray God gives you traveling grace. It's crazy out there on the road. And I'm like, yeah, let me pray for you. I'm like, okay. And it was a trip because I started thinking like, maybe there's something wrong with me because I mean I believe in traveling graces. Don't get me wrong, but I figure like, Lord, I'm worshiping half the time. I'm listening to some sermon, whatever. I just assume like I'm gonna be covered, but I never really
Yeah.
thought like I'm not be. But the way they said it, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I pray. I have friends that pray every time I get in the car. I get it. But I guess the way they said it, it wasn't just like, let me pray for you. Like, man, I need to pray for you because it's dangerous out there. And I was like, man, I drive to LA all the time because that's where my family lives, you know what I mean, from San Diego. And I just was like, it really has stuck with me. I'm like, man, like, Lord, I'm not appreciative. Am I not appreciative? Look, I'm thankful for what you've been giving me, you know what I mean? I've never really been pulled up on the side of the road like that. I mean, every now and then, but I mean, it's been a lot, so
Yeah.
I'm I just believe like I'm taken care of. So when we talk about sins and our identity, when you are told that your sins are forgiven and you're told that it's nailed to the cross at at the initial salvation point, that sounds great. Especially when like I'm raggedy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I done did some stuff. Thank you, Lord, that nobody know. Okay, that's cool. But as you begin to walk that out and those things come up, and then someone tells you you're just a sinner saved by grace. I'm like, oh Lord, I know I'm not worthy, but Lord, you just come. All that. No, that's not, he don't say that. He said you're made in his image.
Yeah.
So it's not, again, I wish it was just one thing. I wish you like just believe it. And then let's say we do fall into sin patterns, right? And if you don't have the grace uh theology inside of you, you walk in that guilt and shame condemnation, and it's like screw it, right? I know I've been there. I have different patterns and things that I do really good in, and then I fall off the little bandwagon, as I like to say. And then when I lived in that, like, you know what, I done messed up anyway, so who cares, right?
Now you're talking about giving grace to yourself because we sometimes are really quick to give everybody else grace, but not to ourselves.
Right, but the reason why is because we haven't been told that we have that grace. You know what I mean? My mom she was strict, but she was at so the way my mom was like, if you were like a minute or 2 minutes late, like you were still late, right? So then it became like, well, shoot, I'm gonna be in trouble for being a minute late as if I'm an hour late, right? It didn't make no difference. So if I'm like a little bit late, I'm just gonna be a lot late because the consequence is gonna be pretty bad either way. Because there was a little bit of grace, but not that much grace. Cause she said she used to be sitting on the stairs waiting for you. You know what I mean? Like, you supposed to be in at 10:30 or whatever. And so you already knew, right? You ain't gonna be going out for a while. So, but if you get to 10:45, and especially when you're not the one driving, you already know how that goes, right? So then it becomes like, you know what? Forget it. Screw it. Because I'm gonna be in trouble no matter what. So you know what? Whenever I get there, I'm gonna get there and I'll just take it like a G. And that's it. But those are right. And so when you fall into sin patterns, a lot of times when we don't have the right perspective of God or grace or his love for us or forgiveness, or the idea that our sins have been pinned on the cross, that the Bible says while we were yet sinners, he already died for us. So before you believed in him, even if you're a church girl or church boy, whatever, you already know you didn't do it all right. I went to Christian school. Let me tell you, we had some drama, right? It was a novella. But that whole thing, you know what I mean? But if you're not taught that on a consistent basis, you don't know how to walk in the grace of God. People like, oh, you teach people grace, they're gonna sin. They're sinning anyway. Because my big pet peeve is like, all the men and women got to be in separate sides of the church. And like, look, as soon as you could do all that, that's great. But let me tell you what happened when they get in that parking lot, right? Because we don't really believe that it's for the cross. We want to try to manage people in their sin nature. Just do a little bit of this or a little bit of that. I mean, think about it. Statistics say that about 80% of men in the church struggle with pornography. So do you think having separate, again, I know there's a place for that, but some people are like super egregious with that. Man, all that, okay, I hear you. But 80% of men struggle with pornography. So you think that by putting the women over there and the men over there, that's going to keep them from meeting in the parking lot? Okay. I mean, if that's what you think, right? So again, it's because we don't believe it's pinned to the cross. So we try to micromanage people's sin behavior.
That makes sense.
Now, let me say this. I do believe that we need to be wise. I do we need to have discernment, but a lot of that is fear-based. And God is not giving the spirit of fear, but a power, love, and a sound mind. And the problem is if you haven't taught people how to interact with opposite sex or these other issues, and sex is a huge, sin topic all the time, often, right? Sex and tithing, then how do they get on the real world? And how do they themselves in the real world if they can't manage themselves on a Sunday and one weekday service? Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
That part.
That makes a lot of sense. Because, I mean, multiple times it's like, how am I here again? What happened? This doesn't make any sense. And like you said earlier, you asked that question, okay, what's wrong with me? And it's not even anything that's wrong with you. Just you haven't been discipled. You haven't been told the how. We got the what, but we don't know the how to do that. It makes a lot of sense. Well, I definitely appreciate you for joining us today on the now Anchored Identity Podcast. We've definitely changed the name, huh?
To get it anchored in the right thing.
Get it anchored in the right thing. Yeah. You gave us a lot of good information, a lot of tangible next steps. I love the sit, ask, listen, have a notebook ready, and whatever comes, write it all down.
I will tell you, you might be mad about what he's talking about, but like, what? That's nuh-uh. Trust me, he'd be like, what? Like, mad.
And even learning the difference between what we got? Agreements, vows, soul ties, and you added the bitter root judgment. I'm glad you added that to the list, and how it's all spiritual warfare. We are so, including myself, we're so hooked on the physical aspect, but we don't take the time out to be like, this has nothing to do with physical. This is all spiritual warfare. This is all what's going on around us in the spiritual world. But is there any closing comments that you want to give the audience before we go?
Yeah, and I want to say, real spiritual warfare is real. Spiritual warfare comes in all different things, but the enemy loves to start with identity because it's just so easy.
Yeah.
It's easy to do that. We do get attacks, people who believe and who are really trying to walk out that life, live that life, do that life. There are different attacks and you might see it. This is where bitter root judgments to me is like a big deal because you might see people, walking out a certain thing, they try to do the same thing and then they just get attacked differently. I did the same thing, and then we judge them like, oh, they're not in, they don't have integrity, and I'm not saying that they do have integrity, but sometimes that's still a choice. You know what I mean? If you get attacked in your finances often because you're a giver, that's that happens, and that's also spiritual warfare. And then what happens is when we judge people for those things, and we don't really know the underlying reasons. We don't know what they've been told about themselves, about their confidence in themselves. So there's a lot of different things, and I wish it was just one little thing, but it's a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
Because when you're the enemy, when the devil himself is the enemy of our soul, then the idea is he's attacking our mind, our will, and our emotions. And his greatest power is when he attacks our emotions. So this is why mental health to me is such a huge thing, because what I realize is God gave us a will. And this is hard for people to really swallow, but he made Adam and Eve in the garden. Now, they had everything they could eat. He told them, don't, just one tree, don't touch that one tree, right? And yet because he gave them a will, he allowed them to eat from this tree that basically put them into a place of, forever being separated from God without the redemption power of the redemption of the Lord Jesus Christ. So that's one thing. But when you have a mental health issue and now you're depressed or you have these things going on in your head, you're hearing things like that, and nobody talks to you about spiritual things, okay, like real spiritual stuff. And that's a conversation that we should definitely have.
Yeah.
And it takes away your will. What does that mean? Because my mind is now clouded with, sin things or behavior, the lies of the enemy. I'm now kind of walking robotically into sin patterns. Lies and things like that. And so he's basically usurping your will. Now I'm on medications and all I can do is sit like a zombie. And then when I'm not, I'm tripping and stuff like that. And so that's why, to me, I think mental health in this season that we're in, we got social anxiety. Well, okay, that's cool. You have social anxiety, but the Bible's like, going to all the one and preach the gospel, but you're afraid to leave your house. So he's usurping our will through these little undermining things. And so spiritual warfare looks different. Because to me, spiritual warfare is like biological warfare. The enemy's using biological warfare. And biological warfare, I remember going on a date with this scientist, and that's what he did. He worked, he was a biochemist. And biological warfare is where you put stuff in the water. You put stuff in this. And so, again, and I'm going to say this might be controversial, but let's just talk about this real quick as some of my closing statements about what this looks like. So biological warfare is social media, right? On social media, and it's all bad, and it's all bad. So you got Christian people, I'm taking a fast on social media. Okay, so instead of you fighting, the biological or the technological warfare with the enemy, you're just gonna avoid it altogether. So you ain't gonna put no Christian post. Look, and I'm not a huge social media person, but when I hear these things, I'm just like, they missed it. Right? What going back to Billy Graham and going back to some of these other like famous people, when their stuff became televised, they were able to reach the world. How do you go into all the world and reach the gospel, when you got poverty all over the place and you won't use the internet because it's the devil's playground? I hear you, but it's depending on what site you go on. You know what I'm saying? Because if you that part.
Your Instagram feed is only picking up what you put in it.
That's right. That's right. So you putting the wrong thing in it, it ain't the devil, it's the choices you're making. So again, these ideas are that, and it's a broader perspective, but they're just real practical, right? What you put in is what you're getting out. So, I've said this for years. If you step on my toe and I get mad and say something, whatever's coming out of me, it ain't because you stepped on my toes, because that's what's in me.
Yeah.
Because you might somebody's telling them like, oh my God, that hurt. I'm so sorry. Like, oh, it's okay. I know. And you like, oh, okay. Right. And you might step on somebody else's toe. They're like, that hurt. You blippity bloop, boop, 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 boop. Oh, that's because they stepped on my toe. Like, what? That's they stepped on your toe. Like, nah, that's stepping on your toe. That was just, that was at the water fountain. I was just like pressing the water. That's like the lemonade jar, right? The lemonade jar. You press that button and what came out was some lemonade. It wasn't the stepping on your toe. What was in there is what came out of you. So it ain't because somebody stepped on your toe. It's because you got some other stuff up in there you probably need to work on. That part. You just pin that to the cross. It's pinned to the cross, right? There you go. A little lemonade, pulp flying in there, like pin that to the cross, because it ain't. So that's what it looks like. And so there's so many different things converging on each other the challenge that I see is that we have so many crazy beliefs about things that are just not aligned with the word of God.
Yeah.
And they impact us physically, they impact our life, they impact all of our relationships. You know, I know a lot of people that are sacrificing things in the name of Jesus, and you know, they're putting it behind religion. Religion is a spirit. That's a whole nother conversation. The spirit is one of the most difficult spirits to even navigate through because it seems right and righteous. But I tell people all the time, look at it wasn't the sinners that put Jesus on the cross. It was the religious people, the ones that killed Jesus. You know, I mean, it was Christian folks that killed Jesus. It wasn't sinners. Because he hung out with the sinners. They called him a wine bibber. That means he hung out with people that drank. Now I know that's gonna kill some of y'all theology, but yeah, Jesus hung around people that drink. It says he was counted with the wine bibbers. That means somebody saw Jesus with a glass of wine. I know that's just gonna jack y'all up, but you can't be a wine bibber if you didn't sip on the wine, right? Even Paul told Timothy to drink some wine for your stomach, right? I mean, all those things. So I know people like, oh, he didn't really turn to real wine. He turned some grapefruits at that wedding. Well, that's not what he said. Like, man, you saved the best for last. Now, if you I'll go to happy hour sometimes, and just let me say this. So like, oh, they're gonna put a whole bunch of ice up in there. You know what I mean? You can't taste nothing but the pineapple juice. Okay, mad at you. But if they said Jesus saved the best for last, they probably could taste a little something up in there, right? They probably want the ice and the pineapple juice. The best for last don't taste like that. The best for last. I'm gonna water this down. How much was this again? I ain't paying $15 for some ice and some pineapple juice. I'll take me some sparkling water, please.
Yes.
That part. So it's all of that. So yeah. So
I love it.
those are my closing remarks. That just know who you are. A friend of mine, she was telling me this past week, she has these let there be statements, and let there be what is that, you want. Let there be a husband in my future, my near future, my 2025, according to the man finds a wife finds a good thing. That's the verse I'm standing on, right? Right. Let there be some finances in my bank. I think the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. Bring them on, Jesus. I'm gonna save each and every one of them one at a time, but let them put that money in their bank account, right? It's that, right? My children be mighty in the land. I don't care what they're doing. Let there be mighty children in the land, my offspring. Let there be statements, and they're powerful because not only are you redirecting the words that you say, because the Bible says life and death in the power of tongue, and I really believe that. And a lot of people are living off things that they have said, even cliches. One step forward, two steps back. When it rains, it pours. If anything can go wrong, it will. All that word curses.
Yes.
Word curses.
Yes. And we so worried about using certain. We so hung up on certain words, but we don't even know that we're cursing ourselves with the everyday jargon.
That part. You better off saying the curse words than to curse yourself. And ain't no good man out there. Okay, then that's what you keep attracting. You keep attracting no good men. I don't know where y'all. There's a lot of crazy men out there. I know a lot of them. And that's it. So that's it. And I was like, okay, that's it. So those are all word curses. Things we agree with, things that we say, and it's a big deal. So there you have it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was a very fun episode. Kat, what social media are you on? How can we find the book? Any updates? Any events or anything happening?
Yeah, so I'll be speaking actually. The Brianna from the Anchored Identity podcast will also be speaking at the Long Beach Convention Center on May 31st. Our breakout session is at 2 p.m. in room 202B. And so hopefully if you have the opportunity, you can drive up. Long Beach is a beautiful, beautiful city. My mother grew up there. My grandmother used to live there as well before she passed away. So it's a great, great city. And so we'll be there at the Long Beach Convention Center. To register, it's free. It doesn't cost anything to go. And again, we'll be there speaking live in the breakout room at 2:00 p.m. So hopefully you can come out. You can reach out to me at 949-478-0186, or you can reach me at CAT at yourpbh, which is yourpbh.com. And so you can find me there. And of course, I do have office in San Diego, California, and you can reach out to me and get more information. So thank you.
Yes, and the book is coming out. So
coming out. Yes.
Be on the lookout.
Digital downloads. I just reached out to a friend of mine. And so, yeah, I have a digital download, which is not just a book, but like a workbook, like just the questions that we were asking again. A lot of it, it's not just a spiritual based book. It's part of it, but it's just practical, like scenarios about different relationships and what we believed about them. And, the stuff we would see, like, if that was me, and then when it's you do the same thing. So stop it. Have some grace. So, but yeah, so the book will be out by next week, the digital download. I've been working diligently. I'm up in Vegas this weekend. This week, I'm working diligently to get the digital download ready for people to be able to download it, and we'll go from there. And then we should have the book out, the physical book, for those who want that within the next 2 weeks. So yeah.
Awesome. So you guys heard it from her herself, where to find her, the number to call, the website to go to. So any questions you guys have, make sure you reach out to Kat. And until next time, have a great day. Bye.
Bye.